Okay. Well, welcome everyone for joining our behavior management webinar, and we're really pleased and excited to have Glenn Messman. He's a assistant professor here at the University of Arkansas for Medical Sciences. I just want to go over a couple of brief housekeeping items before we get started. During the presentation, please mute yourself by pressing *6. And if you'd like to ask a question during the presentation, you can use the chat feature, this little bubble icon that's found on the right side of your screen. And hopefully we'll have some time at the end for some questions, answers. And if you'd like to ask a question, just remember to unmute yourself again by pressing *6. And this webinar is being recorded, so we will provide a link to our presentation from our website that's listed below there. And if you all are having any problems hearing the presenter or anything like that, please unmute yourself and let us know. So without further ado, I'm going to hand this over to Dr. Messman.
Good afternoon, everyone. I'm glad that you guys could join us. I'm really excited today to be talking about behavior management, and it's going to be more general behavior management, and I know that many of the kids who experience trauma do have some behavioral difficulties, so hopefully some of this information will be helpful for you guys in figuring out how to help parents with some of those difficult behaviors that children with trauma sometimes exhibit. So just a brief overview. It's going to be about behavior management, and I just kind of wanted to open with this idea that successful management of children with challenging behavior requires the consistent use of a variety of methods implemented in a coordinated manner. And I definitely highlighted a couple keywords because the idea is consistency. With parent management, consistency is the most important thing for parents to do. However, we know that it's definitely the most difficult for them. So consistency is key with using any of the parent management strategies. Also using a variety of methods. It's not just one. If parents are just using punishment or if they're just using praise or attention, that's not usually enough. There needs to be several different methods, and they need to be used in a coordinated manner. It's not done in a haphazard way. Usually there's a developmental approach with starting with one set of skills and then working on to some higher level ones. So the skills that we're going to be going over today very briefly are developing positive parent-child interaction skills, how to give effective commands, rewarding to increase desired behaviors, using methods to reduce undesired behaviors, and using selective attention. So the first set of skills I'm going to go over is called parent-child interaction skills. And the goal is to increase your child's positive behaviors. So we want to increase some of the behaviors that we like to be seeing. We want to improve your child's mood, self-esteem, and relationship between parents and children as well. And the goal with parent-child interaction skills is to improve monitoring of the child's behavior and respond in a way that's effective and rewarding. We want to help parents develop these skills and it becomes so natural for them that they start using these skills when they're walking through the living room and they're seeing their kid play really well with the sibling. The parent's automatically going to be giving some of these praise and attention to them, and it's become very automatic for them. So that's the goal of when you're doing parent-child interaction skills. Some ineffective ways that parents and child interact is that sometimes parents give unnecessary commands when they're interacting with their children, and you can imagine that if parents are giving lots of commands to the children probably doesn't want to interact with the parent as much. And I'm sure you can imagine as well being an adult, and if you have a boss that's just giving you commands all the time, it's probably not going to be wanting to spend a lot of time with that person because they're just telling you what to do all the time. Also, ineffective parent-child interactions, many times parents are using questions as a way to interact. And many times by asking questions, you're kind of taking the lead out of you're taking the lead away from the child, and it feels like the child just has to answer question after question. And also, sometimes negative things happen, such as responding to negative attention-seeking behaviors that children exhibit. And finally, many times parents fail to notice and positively respond to good behavior enough. Many times parents only respond to negative behavior, and they're not paying attention to when positive behavior occurs. So once again, a child maybe feels like they're doing lots of positive things, but parents are not interacting with that. They're not paying attention to that at all. So, and I thought this next cartoon was very applicable. It's Dennis the Menace, and he says, "My problem is that I'm always good when nobody is watching." And obviously that's what we want to happen with parent-child interaction skills. We want the parents to pay attention to the children when they are doing well so they can catch them kind of being good and giving them lots of praise and rewards and reinforcement for that. So what do effective parent-child interaction skills look like? Obviously, there is a lot of praising, and this is what we call more labeled praise. Labeled praise tells a kid specifically what they are doing right, such as an example is maybe if you're playing with a kid and the kid builds a tower and the parent says, good job with that tower, or you drew a pretty tree, or nice drawing, or thank you for sharing, or I like how gently you're putting the crayons away. It's very, very specific in telling the kid exactly what the parent likes that the kid is doing. And this is more likely to increase the behavior that's being praised, and it shows approval of the child, and it's going to help try to build the child's self-esteem and make the child feel good if you're giving lots of praise. Also, reflecting. Reflecting is simply you're kind of like a parent. A parrot. A parent is parroting back to what the child says and is kind of paraphrasing things in a way. For example, maybe a child says, I drew a tree. A parent also says, yes, you made a tree. Or a child says, doggy has a black nose. And a parent says, yes, the dog's nose is black. Or the child may say, I like to play with blocks. And a parent paraphrases back and says, you're having fun with the blocks. The idea here and the reason that you want to be using reflecting skills is that it's letting the child lead the conversation, but you are showing interest in what the child is saying, and it's demonstrating acceptance and understanding of the child's behavior and what they're saying. And also it can help improve the child's speech as well because they're hearing language spoken by another person, and it can increase verbal communication as well. So reflecting is also a very positive thing to do with parent-child interactions. Also, imitating. Imitating is you're copying what the child is doing. So the child puts a nose on Mr. Potato Head. The parent also puts a nose on Mr. Potato Head. The child draws circles on a piece of paper, and parents also draw circles on a piece of paper. Once again, with imitating, you're letting the child lead the play. You're showing approval of the child's game. You're making the game fun for the child, and increases the child's imitation of things that you're teaching them, and also it teaches the child how to interact and play with other people as well when you're interacting with them. And the next another effective parent-child interaction is describing. With describing, it's basically kind of like a sports announcer, simply describing what they are seeing. So you're describing what the child is doing. So if the child is building a tower, the parent says something like, you're building a tower, or you drew a square, or you're dressing Mr. Potato Head, or you put the girl on the fire truck. You're just simply describing, like I said before, like a sports announcer who's describing everything that's happening on the screen if you're watching a sports game on TV. And describing is helpful because it's letting the child lead the play. It shows that you're interested. You're teaching the child concepts. It's modeling good speech and vocabulary. And you're helping hold the child's attention to their task as well. So we want to praise, reflect, imitate, and describe. But the three things that parents want to reduce when they're interacting with their child is reducing questions, because questions means that the parent is leading the conversation instead of the child. Many questions are commands and actually require an answer. And sometimes it seems to a child that the parent isn't actually listening to them because they're asking so many questions. So questions can be like, we're building a tall tower, aren't we? Or what sound does the cow make? Or what are you building? Or do you want to play with the train? By just asking so many questions, you're taking the lead away from the child, and it's not as fun and enjoyable. Also, parents want to reduce commands when they're interacting with their child as well. Commands basically tell the child what to do. Let's play with the farm next. Give me the pigs. Please sit down and play next to me. Look at this. Let's go over here. You're taking the lead away from the child, and it can cause conflict because you're trying to introduce something that the child may not necessarily want to do. So you want to reduce commands as well when parents are interacting with their kids. And also reducing criticism. Criticism, sarcasm express disapproval of the child's behavior. Examples of, this is really stupid, or why are you doing it that way, or don't color the sky pink, or stop it, or no, sweetie, that's not where it goes. All those examples of when parents are giving criticisms to their children, it gives attention many times to negative behavior. It can lower the child's self-esteem, and it can cause kind of angry feelings between a parent and a child. And it can teach the child negative social behaviors as well. So when teaching parents how to effectively play with their kids, you want to make sure that parents are praising their kids very specifically. The labeled praise, they're saying specifically what they like. They're reflecting like a parrot. They're imitating what the child is doing. They're describing what the child is doing, and they're reducing the questions, criticisms, and commands. And I know that's a very, very brief overview of parent-child interaction skills, but I do want to move into some of the other parent management strategies as well. The next one is command giving. So many times parents are giving kids lots of commands. They're telling them what to do all the time. But many times kids are confused by the commands. They're not sure what is supposed to be happening, and there decreases the likelihood that a kid will follow the command. So an important part of parent management is teaching parents how to give effective commands to their children. And I listed several different ways in which commands can be effective. One of the best ways for commands to be effective is if they are direct. And by direct, an example of a direct command is please hand me the blocks, or put the train in the box, or draw a circle. That is a direct command. A parent is specifically telling the child what they want them to do. And it's a direct command instead of an indirect command. An indirect command is, will you hand me the block? Well, there you're giving the choice to the child to actually follow the command or not, because you're asking a question. Or let's put the train in the box. So you're suggesting that kind of maybe you're going to be helping, the parent's going to be helping the kid as well. And would you like to draw a circle? Once again, if you want them to draw the circle, a parent needs to say, please draw the circle, instead of asking a question. So in order for increase the likelihood that commands will be followed, they need to be direct. Another part of giving effective commands is that they need to be positively stated. And by positively stating things, I mean this is you're telling them specifically what to do, not what not to do. So you're telling them what to do, not what not to do. So say something like, come sit beside me, instead of don't run around the room. Saying something like, put your hands in your pocket, rather than stop touching the crystal glasses. If you're telling them what not to do, you're not necessarily telling them what to do, and it can kind of be confusing for them. And if you're telling them what to do, you're not really criticizing some of the child's behavior as well, and it's providing a clear statement of what the child can or should do. So commands should be positively stated. You're telling them what to do instead of what not to do. Also, commands should be given one at a time. If you are chaining commands and telling them 5 things in a row to do, like put your shoes in the closet, take a bath, and brush your teeth, well, that's not a very effective command because there's so many commands in there. The child may do the first one, but then they get lost or confused and can't remember the second or third command to give. So a better way of doing it is put your shoes in the closet, a very specific command, and it's one command at a time, or put your shirt in the hamper, as opposed to something like clean your room by putting the toys in the toy box, hang up your clothes in the closet, vacuum the floor, and make your bed. That's way too many commands at one time. You've got to give commands one at a time. If parents are able to do that, it increases the likelihood that the child will follow the command. Also, commands should be very specific rather than vague. So commands such as get off the chair is more specific than be careful. Be careful can mean lots of different things. So if you're specific, you're saying get off the chair instead of be careful. Or a more specific command is talk in a quiet voice instead of behave. What does really behave mean? That's very vague. Parents need to be very specific of what they want their child to do so they know exactly what they should be doing. Also, of course, it makes sense that commands should be age appropriate. Many times parents are giving commands to children that just don't make sense for their age, or they're using language which is not appropriate for either their developmental level, and they're just not sure what they should do. So make sure that your parents are using language that's appropriate for their child's age, and they're giving them commands that is appropriate for their age as well. And also, commands should be polite and respectful. So maybe if a child is banging a block on the table, a parent in a normal tone and voice should say, please hand me the block, instead of screaming or yelling, hand me the block this instant. It creates more of a negative interaction if a parent is yelling. There's too much emotion. Parents should be more more robotic. It should be very simple, matter-of-the-fact statement. Their voice is not elevated. They're not screaming. They're not yelling. They should be giving commands in a very matter-of-the-fact way. So commands should be polite and respectful. And you can imagine as well, if you have a boss at work and your boss is telling you to do things, if they're yelling and screaming at you to do things, you're less likely to do it. But if your boss is talking to you in a polite and respectful way and saying please and telling you what you should do, you're more likely going to be following what that parent wants, what your boss wants you to do. So it's the same thing between parents and children as well. And also commands should be given only when necessary. Many times parents are giving command after command after command after command after command, and of course the child isn't going to be following all those commands. So parents do need to be thoughtful about, when am I giving this command? Am I giving the command at a time when the child is likely to be following commands? If they're really engaged and engrossed in a television show or a movie or video game, is it essential that I give this command right now, or can I wait for 5 minutes after the show is over and then give them the command? So making sure that you're being thoughtful when parents are giving commands as well, because they should only be used when necessary. So those are 7 different ways to try to increase how to teach parents how to give effective commands, and these will increase the likelihood that kids will follow the commands that their parents are giving. So the next behavior management strategy is called reinforcement. And reinforcement is a process in which a behavior is increased. So this is, you want to increase the positive, pro-social, desired behaviors. And it's going to increase because of the consequence that's following the behavior. So a behavior occurs, you want it to occur more often, you have a consequence. And the consequence is a reinforcer if it increases the behavior. So factors that you need to consider, that parents need to consider when they're doing reinforcement, is that if a parent wants to increase a child's behavior, the reinforcement needs to occur immediately after the behavior occurs. So if a child shares with a sibling, the parent needs to immediately give praise and tell them, thank you so much for sharing with your sister, as opposed to later on in the day when they're tucking the child in and say, remember this morning when you were playing with the blocks with your sister and you shared with her? I really liked that. It's not going to be very effective because it's so much longer in the day. So it needs to occur immediately after the behavior occurs. Also, if you want to increase someone's desired behavior, you give them reinforcement every single time that it happens. If you only give reinforcement every once in a while when someone is learning a behavior, it's not as effective as opposed to giving them reinforcement every single time that it happens. And also making sure the child has little access to the reinforcer at other times, such as maybe if a parent is going to teach a child with toilet training and sitting every time they sit on the toilet they get an M&M. That's wonderful, but if a child is able to eat M&Ms all day long, and then they also get an M&M when they sit in the toilet, that's not a very effective reinforcer because they have access to the reinforcer all day long. So parents need to make sure if they're going to reinforce a child's behavior that they need to make sure the child does not have access to this reinforcer throughout the day or other times. And also parents need to make sure that a reinforcer is powerful. This is something that the parents mean that this is something desired. The children want this reinforcer. They want to work for this. It's something that's powerful to them. So one type of reinforcement is simply using praise. And that's kind of like what I described earlier with more of the parent-child interaction skills, that with praise, parents are praising the child and it's labeled praise. So effective praise is very, very specific. Thank you so much for giving your sister the Barbie doll when she asked. That's very, very specific, as opposed to good job with your sister. That's not very specific. Praise needs to be specific. Praise needs to occur immediately after the behavior occurs. Like I said, it needs to happen as the behavior is occurring or after it, not later on in the day as the parent is checking in the child. And praise needs to be consistent. Once again, every time this desired behavior occurs, praise needs to be happening. And also praise should not be qualified, such as maybe a kid does a good job riding in the car on the way to school and he puts on a seatbelt, and a parent says to the child, thank you so much for putting your seatbelt on and keeping it on when we rode to school. How come you don't do that all the time? That's not very effective praise because you're qualifying it and kind of making a negative statement associated with it. So you're decreasing the potential powerfulness of the praise because you qualified it with some sort of negative. And also praise should occur at the same level and intensity as criticism. So many times there should be way more positives than criticism. Many times parents just give criticisms a lot and they're not really praising their children very much. Or many times parents say they're like yelling and screaming, it's a really intense response to the child, but when it comes to praise they just say something like, oh, good job, I'm so happy you did that. That's not a very powerful way of praise because it does not at the same level as criticism or greater. It just seems very like the parent is very disinterested and they're just doing it because it's something they feel like they should have to do. So with praise, these are things that are good to do with everyday activities, such as compliance, children sharing, something that happens many times throughout the day, just offering praise, and it can be used for anything. So praise is one of the best way for parents to increase children's desired behaviors. Another thing that parents can do as well is actually using rewards. And rewards should be more for special occasions, and they can be used for some day-to-day situations, but not for things like following directions or listening or sharing with your sister. Rewards should really be for something that's more special, such as behavior in public or completing chores at home. And rewards are also good because they can provide additional incentive to stimulate motivation. Many times kids just are not very motivated to work well for their parents or to work hard, so sometimes rewards also can be necessary as well to increase the motivation of a child. And a great way to manage reward is to use a behavior chart. It's a very convenient way, and it can be used with children 4 years of age or older. And here's just a very simple behavior management chart, such as this is more with chores, such as making the bed or brushing the teeth. And every time this behavior occurs, it's throughout the week, the parent puts a star on the chart that corresponds with that day. So you can see with the first week, the child making the bed did it on 5 days, and then brushing the teeth, maybe the child did it on 4 days. So it's a very, very simple way to track behavior and enhance motivation. And they get stars, and also, as we're developing a behavior chart, many times the stars kind of stand for something else, meaning that if you get so many stars, you get to earn some other prize or reward. So we're going to briefly talk about how to develop a behavior chart. It's very important for behaviors to be specific and clear and simple and positively stated. Once again, what you want them to do. So maybe with the brushing of the teeth, maybe it's very specific that after breakfast in the morning, the child brushes their teeth for 30 seconds. It's very specific, it's very clear, it's simple, the child knows what to do, and it's positively stating. You're telling them what to do. You simply make the chart and display it. There's many different places that you can get behavior charts. They're easy to make yourself, and they can be, like I said, just similar to the one that I had on the previous slide, just something like that, simple and easy. And then you create a menu of rewards. Many times there are daily rewards, which are smaller rewards, and weekly rewards. And weekly rewards mean there's a criterion of how many times they need to do that throughout the week before they get the weekly reward. So a daily reward can be like a small toy. Maybe a child can stay up for an extra 10 minutes past bedtime. Maybe they can have a preferred dessert at dinner time, or maybe they can play a special game with their parent. So those are more quick, easy, simple things or daily rewards. They do not always have to be things that parents buy. They can just be, like I said, an extra 10 minutes of TV or bedtime, or staying up an extra little bit. It doesn't mean that parents have to buy things all the time. It can be access to other preferred activities. And also weekly rewards are more larger rewards, such as an outing with a parent, spending a night at a friend's house, renting a video game or a movie, or maybe having an allowance. So daily rewards are smaller ones, and then weekly rewards are built upon the daily rewards. So when you're developing a behavior management chart, what you initially want to do is you define the behaviors, like I said, make the chart and make a menu of rewards, and then you want to set up an appropriate goal, and that's critical for the success. If a child does not start earning a daily reward within the first few days, the program is not likely to work because they're not going to be motivated for it because they're not earning anything. It's important for the child to feel like it's possible to earn the rewards. And a great way for it to help children earn the rewards is you use a shaping process when setting goals. Set the initial goal just slightly above the number of times the child currently already does the behavior. So if the child brushes his teeth already 4 times a week, the first goal should be, for the first week, let's do it for 5 times a week. It shouldn't be 7 because that's way too big of a goal considering they're only doing it 4 times a week. And a reasonable starting goal will make it easier for the child to earn the rewards for good behavior and experience success with the program. And if the goal is set too high, the child may give up before giving a chance to experience the rewards. So, like I said, if they're brushing the teeth 4 times, the goal for the first week should be 5 times. And once they're able to do it 5 times, the next goal should be 6 times. Obviously, you want to work up to 7, but you can't set the goal too large in the first week because the child is not going to be able to reach the goal, and it's not going to be successful, and they're going to give up. So what are some issues with making the behavior chart? Some mistakes. The child never earns the reward. This means the child may perceive the reward as not obtainable or the goal is set too high. So once again, we can make sure we use a shaping procedure to make sure that the initial goal, the reward, is just slightly above the current behavior. And sometimes the rewards are not very meaningful or powerful enough. maybe the weekly reward is like $1 for a kid. Well, maybe that's not a strong enough or motivating reward for them. Maybe they want a little bit more, and that's something to negotiate with the parent, or maybe they want something else instead. But maybe they never earn the reward because they're not working for it, because they don't think the reward is something important to them or that's something that they want to work towards. If the child stops the behavior after the rewards are stopped, because eventually you don't want to do the behavior chart forever, but if the child stops doing the behaviors because the behavior chart is no longer being used, sometimes you can move from a continuous to an intermittent reinforcement schedule. Like I said at the beginning, when a child is learning behavior or doing something, a parent wants to reward every single time. However, once they have developed and reached a certain criterion, maybe the child is now making his bed 7 times a week, then you can use to an intermittent schedule, meaning that they earn rewards maybe every other week when they have earned 7 stars for that week. So you move to a more intermittent schedule, and then it maintains the behavior instead of having to reinforce every single time. When you can gradually fade out rewards by gradually adjusting the goal or maybe pairing the rewards with praise. Anytime that you're giving a parent's giving a kid some type of object or a tangible reward, you want the parent to also praise the child as well. And hopefully the praise will be meaningful to the child, that eventually all the parent needs to do is just praise them for doing their behavior. Other mistakes is the behavior chart worked for a few weeks and then stopped working. And this is something that needs to just evaluate. Maybe there was inconsistent management of the program. Maybe the child met their criterion and maybe it was 5 times of brushing their teeth, and they did that, and the reward was to go to a friend's house. Well, maybe their parent said that they couldn't go to the friend's house on the weekend. Maybe the parent isn't following through with the rewards. So maybe sometimes the behavior chart doesn't work because there's inconsistent management of the program. Sometimes rewards have lost their value. If the child has the same reward every single weekend, it's not going to be very rewarding after a while. If it's maybe they can have like the same they can have like Smarties or something like that, and that's all they ever get is Smarties, 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 the rewards are going to lose their value. So what you need to do is have parents develop a menu, and the children can choose the rewards that they want to have for that day or for that week. And it's good to have a variety of things for them to choose from. Okay, so that's a quick overview of the behavior charts. And I also want to talk about different punishment strategies. So reinforcement strategies want to increase desired behaviors. Punishment is you want to decrease the undesired behaviors. And once again, it's the same factors for punishment that you use with reinforcement. The punishment needs to occur immediately after the behavior occurs. It's given every time the behavior occurs, and the punisher is powerful. And by powerful, I mean that it's something that's aversive enough that the child doesn't want to have this happen again. So considerations, though, when using punishment, it teaches a child what not to do, not necessarily what to do. Just because the parent is giving a punisher, the child may no longer be doing that negative behavior, but that doesn't necessarily mean that they're going to increase their positive behavior. That's why you need to have some type of reinforcement system as well. Also, when parents give a punishment, it can be a negative interaction. It can disrupt mood, there can be arguing, there can be fighting because a parent is giving a punisher. Also, it can lead to escape or avoidance. A child maybe tries to flee a situation, or they avoid the situation, or they never put themselves in that situation because they know they may be punished. Many times punishment is overused by parents because it may decrease the child's behavior, and therefore that's reinforcing and rewarding to the parent. So like, well, every time a child does this and I give them a punisher, it decreases their behavior. Well, that's rewarding to a parent, so a parent's going to be wanting to do that again and again in the future. And what can happen is that parents can rely so much on just punishers and without thinking about other type of behavior management strategies. And punishment works best when just a little is used, and there are a lot more positives than punishment. In short, mild punishment is best, and obviously it needs to fit with the age of the child. So I'm going to talk about several different punishment strategies and techniques. And the first one is timeout. And this is a very, very, very brief overview of timeout. I could probably talk a whole hour on just timeout. But with timeout, the idea with timeout is there's a loss of access to all positive reinforcers for a brief period of time following a problem behavior. So a child is removed from a situation, and they're in a situation for a brief period of time in which there is nothing positive or enjoyable or anything like that going on during that brief time. So with considerations, you need to think of the function of the behavior. So behaviors used behaviors that are being maintained by positive reinforcement, this is a good thing to use timeout for. So maybe the child maybe hits his sister because he wants to see her cry. Well, he's being positively reinforced by seeing a sister cry, so he's going to punch her again in the future. Well, timeout could be helpful for this because he's being removed from that situation, and it's a punishment for him. However, if a child already wants to leave a situation and then you give a timeout, that's not going to be very effective. If you're having a family dinner and the child wants to leave a table, so he starts throwing a fit and has a temper tantrum and you put him in timeout, well, that's actually what the child wanted all along. So a timeout would not actually be good to use in that situation because the function of their behavior is to leave the table. So you're actually kind of rewarding and reinforcing them for wanting to leave the table. And now they're going to maybe be more likely to throw a fit the next time out there at the table and want to leave because you're going to put them in timeout. So you need to think of the function of the behavior and whether the timeout should be used for that. Also, parents need to think about the practicality of timeout. Is there a room or a chair where there's no access to positive things going on? And also, is it an environment that's going to be safe for the child? The length of the timeout generally is 1 minute to 2 minutes for every age of the child. And also, when a timeout is ending, parents also need to be thoughtful as well, is that there needs to be an absence of the problem behavior before the child can leave timeout, such as maybe the child is doing timeout in his room and he's kicking the door for the whole 5 minutes, and the 5 minutes is up and you let him out as he's kicking the door. Maybe he's thinking he's getting out of timeout because he is kicking the door. So what needs to happen is after the 5 minutes is over, he needs to stop kicking the door for about 10 seconds or so and be quiet, and then he can leave. So if he's not quiet within the last 10 seconds, he's maybe thinking that whatever he is doing is the reason why timeout is ending. So you want to make sure the child understands timeout is ending because they're quiet and sitting in the chair or they're quiet in the room after they serve their specified number of minutes. Also, prevention of escape is important as well. You can't have this kid leaving the chair, or leaving the room, or going all these other places because they're supposed to be staying there because they're not supposed to be doing anything reinforcing for them. And also, parents need to avoid interactions with their children. A child may be screaming and yelling, but then a parent goes over there and starts talking to the child. Well, the child's being rewarded and reinforced for that because they're getting attention. So the parent needs to also try to decrease interactions during timeout. And like I said, that is an extremely, extremely, extremely brief overview of timeout, but those are some considerations that therapists need to be making when they are working with parents and setting up a timeout system. Another punishment strategy is called response cost, and this is removing a specified amount of a reinforcer following a problem behavior. Basically, people kind of think of this as like losing privileges. So considerations is you have to first select the reinforcer that's going to be removed. And it needs to be very meaningful to the child. If a child maybe got an F on the report card and a parent takes away a video game that they never play, well, that's not very meaningful to the child, so that's really not much of a punisher. So parents need to make sure that it is taking away something that's reinforcing to the child. Also, parents need to think about what is the amount of the reinforcer that's being removed or the time that a reinforcer is being removed, such as maybe if parents have a swear jar and every time a child says a swear word, what's the amount of the reinforcer being put in? So they're putting money in. Is it a quarter or is it $1? Also, if a child is losing a video game, do they lose it for 1 day or for the whole week? Parents need to think about the amount of the reinforcer lost or the time that it's lost. Also, and is this an immediate or delayed loss? So a kid comes home on a Tuesday and has an F on a report card. Is this going to be a delayed loss that maybe they can no longer go to a friend's house overnight on Saturday? So that's a delayed loss, or is it going to be some type of immediate loss that maybe that night they have to go to bed or they can't watch their favorite TV show that day? So is it going to be immediate, like happening that right now, that day, or is it going to be delayed later on that week? And also parents need to be thinking about the ethicality. There are certain things that they cannot remove from their children. They cannot deprive their children of basic necessities such as food and water and clothing. Those are things that are non-negotiable and cannot be removed because that is part of the child's basic needs. And so that's response cost. An example of response cost is a quarter in the jar for swearing, 30 minutes less of TV time due to lying, or no dessert because of aggression. So that is one punishment strategy. Another one is called positive practice. And this is when a child does the correct form of a behavior following the problematic behavior. So maybe a child is angry and he goes to his room and he slams the door. Well, positive practice is the child has to practice shutting the door appropriately 10 times. So it's positive practice. They're they're practicing how to engage in the positive behavior. So they slam the door, but they have to actually practice shutting the door correctly 10 times appropriately. So positive practice, like I said before, essentially is they're doing the correct form of the behavior over and over and over and over and over again. And also restitution. Restitution is when a child has to correct the environmental effects of a problem behavior, and they need to restore the environment to better than it was originally. Maybe a girl draws on her bedroom wall with crayons, and she marks all over the wall with crayons. Well, maybe mom or dad has she needs to wash the crayons off the wall, so she's restoring it back to how it was, but she needs to restore it back to better than it originally was. Maybe she needs to wash the marks off the kitchen wall as well, or maybe her brother's wall. So restitution is a child has to return the environment back to how it was, actually better than how it was before. Maybe the room was a little messy, but then they had a temper tantrum and destroyed the room and made it very messy, and everything is all messed up. They have to not only clean the room to the level that it was before, but maybe now they have to clean it spotless. So now they are cleaning it to better than how it originally was before they had the temper tantrum in the room. So that also is another punishment strategy. And the last parent management technique I'm going to talk about is called selective attention, and it's exactly what it sounds like. Parents are selectively attending to their child's behavior. They are paying attention to the positive behavior, but they're ignoring minor disruptive behaviors. So this is best for negative attention-seeking behavior. Many times parents talk about how when they're on their phone, a child is being really disruptive and want to talk to them, or they're fighting with their sibling, or they're trying to get attention to the parent when the parent is on the phone. If the parent uses selective attention, they're ignoring the child when the child is trying to get their attention on the phone, and they're immediately, when the child is no longer bothering them, the parent is rewarding the child through praise and telling them, "Thank you so much for not disrupting me when I'm on the phone." So this is best for negative attention-seeking behaviors, and it prevents accidental rewarding of the negative behaviors, because immediately once the positive behavior occurs, you have to give praise immediately, and the child will learn that the parent is not going to pay attention to the negative attention-seeking behaviors. They're only going to give attention and praise when the positive parts of the behavior occur. So this only works when attention is given for the appropriate behavior. If you're only ignoring the negative behavior but not paying attention and praising the positive behavior, it's not going to work very well. And like I said, the timing is very, very important. The positive behavior, when an incident occurs, the parent needs to be giving lots of praise. And like I said, this is very hard to do because many times kids are very disruptive and they're doing negative attention-seeking behaviors when the parent is really busy and doing something else. So that's the last technique as well. So the different techniques are making sure the child or parent are engaging in positive parent-child interaction times to try to build a good relationship between parent and children. Parents want to make sure that they're giving effective instructions to their kids. They're using some type of behavioral reward system through a behavior chart, or using praise. They can be using a punishment system either through timeout or restitution or positive practice and response costs, and also parents need to be using selective attention as well. So like I said, I know that's a very, very, very brief overview of different parent management strategies, but those are lots of different things that parents can do to help with their kids when they have behavioral difficulties. Okay, well, like I said, I know it's very, very short. I think the slides should be available for you to download and to have, but if you have any questions or anything, you can always contact Chad, and he can be in contact with me if you have any other questions or anything as well. Is there any other burning questions? I don't see anything else that's listed in the question area, so if I don't see anything pop up in the next little bit, I just want to thank you guys very much for coming. I hope this was helpful for you, and like I said, if you have any questions in the future, please contact Chad, and we can get more information to you if you need as well. Thank you. I hope you guys have a great weekend and have a great Thanksgiving next week. Bye.